has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 223, More Plants, Less Stress, Vegan Cooking and Podcasting with Kim Sujovolsky. December 10th, 2024, and that's a happy birthday, Ollie. If you know, you know. December 10th, and we are flying through December, and I have a holiday treat for you this week. Have you ever heard the advice not to meet your heroes? Well, that's not been my experience. And again, this week, I have the pleasure of sharing one of my vegan and podcasting heroes, Kim Sujovolsky from More Plants Podcast and the Brownble Online Vegan Cooking School. You know, when I was first going vegan, I was trying to replace some of those podcasts about cooking that I had in my queue, and I was trying to replace them with podcasts about veganism, about vegan cooking and vegan ethics, and Kim's podcast was one of the first that I encountered and loved. And we will talk about her evolution as a podcaster, her vegan journey, and what Brownble Vegan Cooking School is like, plus much, much more. And yes, it's kind of a long conversation this week because I just didn't want to let Kim go. So maybe put it on 1.5x speed, or maybe listen in 2 sessions, but definitely listen to the end. So you can take advantage of Kim's generous gift to all you Veg Your Best listeners. Okay, I'll catch you on the other side. Kim Sujovolsky, More Plants, Brownble. What else do we know you by? Welcome to Veg Your Best.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This is such a pleasure. I can't even tell you. I know I've told you this before, but I am a massive fan of yours and your podcast. I find your voice the most soothing voice on earth. I listen to it while I cook. I listen to it while I walk the dogs. It's just a pleasure. I love your perspective. We have so many of the same views on veganism, and it's not that common. It's not that easy to find another podcast where I think the views align so much, and sometimes it's just refreshing and relaxing, and it feels like home, and I love it, and I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad. And thank you for those lovely compliments, because, you know, I think podcasting is such an intimate medium. It's going right into your brain almost. It's like somebody whispering in your ear or yelling a little bit in your ear. And so, you know, the people we've listened to for a long time really do become internalized so much. And I know I've been listening to your work since it was Brownble, the podcast.
Yes.
So that's a long time. When did that actually begin?
Oh my goodness. Well, Brownble started, I think, a little over 9 years ago, and the podcast maybe a year after we started Brownble, or a year and a half. So it's a very long time that we've been sharing our content with the world. And it's been a very special journey with lots of changes and just lots of new avenues to tackle. But I think it's been such a fun thing to have something for so long, because you really do change and evolve as the people you're helping are changing. And it's sort of this incredible evolution that you can only realize when enough time has passed, so that you see that journey and what every step meant. It's been very special.
So when you first began the podcast, what it's like, what were you thinking? But what were you thinking? What was I feel like you wanted to make some sort of impact mostly. You wanted to share your journey a little bit. But tell me, what were you thinking? Because I'd like to know, like, along the way, how did some of your thoughts change about the podcast?
I love this question. So the podcast really appeared in our space called Brownble because first and foremost, although I have an absolute passion for cooking and I wanted to teach people how to cook in a delicious way using only plants, which was such a transformative journey for me. And I wanted to support people on this transition. I soon started realizing that some of the issues, difficulties that people were having on their journeys, on the surface, they had to do with food, but really deep down, there were so many other aspects that were sort of behind everything, both from the practical side of things in terms of getting organized and meal planning and batch cooking and really developing systems for your cooking, but also in terms of your relationship with food, also in terms of this tough task that it is to be vegan in a world where most people don't eat this way. And first and foremost, the only reason I went vegan, the reason I have stayed vegan all of these years was to help create a change for animals, for our planet, sure, for people's health and lifestyles, because it transformed so many aspects of my life. I wanted to share, you know how it is. We want to share about that so much. And so I started realizing that I needed something extra. Apart from the cooking content, apart from our YouTube channel where we shared so many recipes, I needed a space where I could have the in-depth conversations that I feel I needed to have when I got started on this journey. And podcasting was the perfect medium. I don't know what it is about audio. I don't know if it's because it's the content that I like to consume. You're so right that it's almost that the person sort of seeps right into your brain. You get this familiar sense with the other person. It's almost like you're having a conversation without having the back and forth. And it was such a special space. And I said, well, I'm just going to try. And I'm going to try with different topics. I'm going to talk about cooking. I'm going to talk about my own journey with food. I'm going to talk about the lifestyle. I'm going to talk about the animals. I'm going to talk about especially all of those tough moments that we go with social relationships, with situations in which we have to be outside the comfort of our own home, where we might be having a fine time making these changes. There were so many topics to cover that went outside of the time we spend in the kitchen with our students. And so that's how the podcast came to be. And through the years, I feel that, I mean, it's in 9 years, the change you go through in your personal life and in just every week being out there explaining things to people and sharing your views and talking, you just develop a different way of sharing information. And so a few years ago, I was trying to get a new season out. And something was just not feeling right. I couldn't get there. And I said, why? What's going on? I just felt that there was this sort of block. And I started listening back to old episodes. And I felt, of course, I had started them when I was so young. I felt that I had such a much more concise and informed way of explaining things now. And I said, this needs that special feeling you get when in the spring you open up all of your closets, you take everything out, you dust everything off, you check the latest research, you include all of those new sources, and you put that out in this new voice. And that's what we did. And that's the sort of 2.0 version of our podcast, which is the More Plants podcast. And and here we are.
Well, it is like I understand the season analogy, and I have to say, going through many of those years with you as a listener, I felt I felt like I knew you as my cousin who was, in a different country, but I felt I knew your mom. I felt I knew your
Yeah.
uncle. I felt I knew family, your grandmother taking you to
Yeah.
Paris. I mean,
Oh my goodness. You've been a long time listener if you remember all of that. I can't
well,
believe it.
some of them really, and so because you mentioned your journey with food, but food, we all have a journey with food,
Hmm.
regardless of whether we have used it in some ways against ourselves, but we have used it. It's so part of our family structure. It's so part of how we comfort ourselves. It's how I remember my mother, even as an older woman, making cornbread pancakes and putting, instead of like syrup, she would put warm milk and brown sugar on them because that reminded her of her grandmother. That
Yeah,
transported her way, way back.
that's beautiful.
And I think we all have these these um, these things we carry with us. And so, of course, when we make a big change with food, for whatever the reason is,
Hmm.
it triggers a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so nice to hear that some of those old stories from our old podcast, just that you remember them, because one of the things I felt as I was going through this transition of shifting to the new podcast and sort of putting everything together, because that was a huge thing. When I listened back to old episodes, I listened with a new ear, right? Because I've gone through all of these 9 years. And I kept having these conversations with myself. And I just kept saying, well, you explain this other part of this thing in episode 150. And then I listened to episode 150 and I said, but yeah, now you're leaving out the story from way back when. And now there's this new piece of research that just came out. And what about that? And so, what I'm planning to do, because all of those stories, all of those episodes, all of the content, everything, we're bringing everything back, but we're bringing it back in a way in which people are going to be able to go to one episode or a couple of episodes and get such a big picture. And I think podcasting, that's the joy and the wonder of podcasting. We're now in I call it a society of snippets, right? We get little pieces of content everywhere and they're exciting and fun. I love to consume them, but there's a lot of nuance that is missing. And podcast allows for that. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give people all of the extra support needed so that this journey is connected, it's fun, it's inspired, it's evidence based. It's very comprehensive in that you have as much information as possible. And that's something that was, I think, missing in some of my very early episodes because, well, I was new at this. I was sort of not learning as I went because I had already been vegan for a long time when I started it, but certainly in terms of communication. And I'm sure that you are a different Michelle now than the first day you started the podcast. It transforms you. Communicating just transforms you and transforms your messaging even.
Well, I really admire the work that must have gone into that because that I can't even imagine. But I do agree that for the work you do with Brown Bull, with teaching, educating people with food, it probably helped, to use a weird word, like professionalize the content that was in the podcast. Because I
Yeah.
think probably I would have earlier on, I would have pointed to you as someone for people to kind of get to know and let that help inspire them on their journey. But it maybe didn't fully feature to best all the educational information that's on your in your groups and in your platform.
Yeah. So that's you basically explained it in a much shorter way than I have, much better way, as you always do. But yeah, that's the idea. I mean, I think that I am in this great privileged position of being able to do all of that work behind the scenes so that the person listening to me has the easiest time and has the most information possible. And although I'm still going to, because people were very scared with this change, and people said, well, what about the stories? What about the family stories? What about your own stories with food and with this process? All of that is still going to be in there because it's me, and I love to share. But there were parts and aspects that I felt were missing, and that's what we're bringing to the table now.
Well, I think it's great. We have to evolve, and I have to also. There was another podcaster, Alyssa from Get Planted. I can't remember. Anyway, it was a wonderful podcast, and she just closed up shop. And I want to find her because she also just talked about her life, and it wasn't so much educational, but it was. I think all of us need certain friends, fellow travelers to go on this trip with, because we can't bring our childhood forward into it. One of the first plant-based vegan decisions you made, as I understand it, was honey, which is to me so interesting, so funny, because honey's usually like
the deal breaker,
down or
or the deal breaker,
or punted for like, okay, well,
exactly. Yeah. Yes. So honey, oh my goodness. It's either the last thing or the thing some vegans never remove, because I do know many vegans who still consume it or consume it sometimes. And it's also the breaking point for many. I think a lot of people who already have sort of made up their minds that they're never going to try this, and they see that and say like, no, like this is excessive. This is too much. And years before I went vegan, I had watched this documentary about honeybees and the place of honeybees in all of our livelihoods. It was a very scary thing at that moment. I think things have slightly improved now, but at that moment, it just in terms of bee populations and bee colony collapses, and there were a whole bunch of issues that were going on that had people very frightened, because of course bees are they're part of biodiversity, of course, but they're such an important part of the availability of fruits and vegetables that we consume, and that other animals consume. And I remember watching that documentary, and I had already sort of started to make the connection with certain aspects of food consumption. And, there were authors out there that were talking about just reducing meat consumption and eating more plants and things like that. I really hadn't connected all of these dots that you start connecting when you start learning about how everything is this sort of path that intertwines in terms of environmental resources and humans and animals and our health, all of these things, right? And that's slightly off topic, although we'll get back to that. But when it came to honey, I said, wow, well, I mean, if part of the issue is, if it's possible that part of the issue is our massive honey consumption, this is something easy that I can just swap out for other things. And I just started having maple syrup and agave syrup and other products. And that was before I went vegan. And so when I went vegan and I went through my whole process, that was already done. It's an unusual way towards it, but you're right. I hadn't seen it that way, that it maybe was my first vegan adjacent choice without really realizing it. And it was really the first time with this very tiny being, this very tiny example of an insect, that I realized how if one little piece of the puzzle fails, everything starts crumbling down. And that's something we are disconnected from. We're so disconnected from the way our food systems are. We're so disconnected from the animals that are on our plates. We go to the store and the food that's on the shelf bears no resemblance, right? And it's everything. The entire system is so out of sight, out of mind. And when you start learning about all of the pieces of the puzzle, you start realizing that, oh my goodness, we've just taken all of our resources for granted, our environment for granted, the the process that food goes through. We haven't looked into any of it. And so maybe the little bee was my little catalyst in a way to start looking into things. Although it wasn't by any means my catalyst for going vegan. That came later.
Well, I think also for most of us, there are the people who learn one thing, the penny drops, and everything changes on that day, that night, whatever. Everything gets swept away. But I think for most of us, it's a dawning, it's a realization, which then butts up against, yeah, but could I do that? Can I? Am I capable of it? Do I have the, the intellectual resources, the emotional resources? Do I have the family support or the community support to even go through with it? So most of us get stuck somewhere there, even if
Yeah.
we think in a perfect world, of course. Most people who I talk to say, yeah, in a perfect world, of course, that would be great. But, and they have all their objections, they have all their, and mostly I think it's they don't believe they can.
Yeah. And I myself went through a moment like that when in my own process, the first time I ever heard the word vegan, I was in a flight from New York to Madrid. And I was reading Alicia Silverstone's The Kind Diet, which I picked from the diet section at Barnes and Noble right before my flight. And I really had I loved her as an actress and I was curious. I had no idea what was hiding inside those pages. I didn't even know she was vegan or I had heard of vegetarianism, of course, but I had never heard the word vegan. And this was a long time before I went vegan myself. And I read this book on that flight and I cried the entire time. I read about what happens to animals. I could not believe that these practices that are not the exception, but the rule were legal and that I was participating in that, whether I agreed to or not, just by purchasing these products. And so I came home and I said, okay, so I'm going to try some recipes. I'm going to try to get started. And I looked at a couple of recipes, and this was so long ago, Michelle, that there wasn't even tofu at the supermarket. I mean, the only option was soy milk sometimes in some stores. So I didn't know back then that there were these incredible stores called health food stores that had everything that was in Alicia's book and that I could have gotten started with. Thank goodness things have changed now. Vegan alternatives and plant-based milks and all of these other products are easily available, which I think, especially in the beginning, you really have to see it in terms of substituting what you were eating and the things that are familiar with an alternative that is easy to find. And so I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find a full recipe that I could make. And so I did what I could for a few days. It sort of dwindled, and the book went back to the bookshelf, and there it stayed for a few years. And the ideas and the things that I had read never left my mind, of course, because you never forget those sort of mental images, because at that point I had only read the book. And then many years later, Netflix appears with its wonderful documentaries. I watched the documentary Vegucated, which was that little red pill for me. And I was looking for the first time at the actual footage of what I had read. And that was it. That was the flip of the switch, because once I saw it with my own eyes, I made a connection. I saw my dog. I saw my dog in the eyes of that animal. And it was a cow that was in line for the slaughterhouse. And I could see the fear. I could see the fear my own dog feels and goes through when I take her to the vet's office and she's totally taken care of and pampered and held and she's given treats and still it's terror. I mean, the face of my dog when I take her to something like that, where she's going to be handled and moved and prodded and pricked with all that care that is, of course, not given to farm animals. I just couldn't separate the two things anymore. And so then I said, okay, there's no going back. I have to figure out a way to do this. And that process of figuring out a way to do this, that's been what we eventually turned into Brownble. It's all of those tools that I feel make this change possible, easy, delicious, fun, and sustainable, especially.
Now, where were you living at that time, Kim?
I was living in Spain.
Okay. So you were living in Spain and you lived previously in Venezuela.
Yes, that's where I was born and raised.
Mm-hmm. And you speak unaccented English because
I don't know. This is something people ask me a lot. I think I have a very good ear. So if you put me in a room with someone who is Australian, I will come out after a week speaking exactly like them. But apart from that, I went to American schools growing up. Most of my family lived in New York City. So I spent the summers there. I spent so much time visiting and I guess it rubbed off. And I'm a huge cinephile and watch so many movies. And I guess that seeped in there as well. But I think it's just that I have a good ear. Like I said, put me in a room with someone with a different accent and I will come out speaking like that in a bit. It's embarrassing, but it's true.
I've been embarrassed by the same thing. I have kind of a simple ear because I just listen to people and then I kind of just mirror them, you know?
It's a mirror thing, 100%.
So now I have a daughter-in-law from Madrid and I have visited Spain even before I had a daughter-in-law from Madrid. And I find it a challenging country to be vegan in.
Okay, so Spain. Spain is it's such a varied country. Depending on where you are, if you're in the countryside or you're in a big city, it can be more challenging or less challenging. If you're in Madrid, where I live, the vegan scene is insane. There are so many options, both in non-vegan restaurants and in vegan restaurants and in vegan-friendly restaurants. It's crazy. You really have to, I mean, I've been living here for years and I've been vegan for over 12 years. And there are still restaurants that I've never been to. It's wild. But yes, if you go to a very traditional Spanish restaurant, sometimes it will be a little bit more challenging. If you go to very rural areas and you try to go to a restaurant, the options are going to be very limited. I think things are slowly changing because people are traveling all over and people are asking, and the word vegan is being, heard. And so people, I think afterwards, they say, well, why do, a certain number of people have asked me this past year. Maybe I should look into this. But yeah, depending on where you are, you have to do a little bit of research or rely on going to, the amazing produce section that we have in supermarkets here. Agriculture is, I think, the biggest economic sort of fuel of Spain. And so fruits and vegetables here, they're amazing. They're plentiful. They're everywhere. And you can find health food stores easily now. They're easy to find. And if there aren't any vegan restaurants in a place you're going to in Spain, you can sort of find a little bit more support here and there with that. And if you're staying in a place where you have access to a kitchen, that's where I can help you and come up with delicious recipes. But yeah, it depends.
Yeah. Well, it's the advice I got a couple of times when we were traveling was to have a local person call ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So that they didn't have the feeling, oh, here's an American who's showing up and wants wants the food the way she has it at home and isn't interested in
Ah,
being here with us. So having
right.
somebody run a little bit of interference ahead of time seemed to be a good. Now, of course, this happens everywhere. There are no places where you don't run into this
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think sometimes you go to a country which you feel you're a guest in that country. You show respect and um, you want to behave like a guest in the country. And when we're talking about Spain, it is a country that has a tremendous amount of pride in many of its artisanal products. And
Yes.
certainly their pork products
Mhm.
are one of the things they're very, very, very proud of. And it is, I find as a traveler, sometimes, especially early on, I had to really practice saying, I know this is the specialty of your country, of your city, of your house, of your restaurant. Um, but you need to help me find something else on the menu, you know? And
Yeah.
I think individuals are very, 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 very helpful. It's sometimes you're in what feels like not one on one, an individual. You've walked into a business and they're like, okay.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. And I hear you on the feeling that they're saying, okay, so here's someone from another country and they're coming in here and they're telling me how I'm supposed to be, putting food on a plate. I think that of course that can happen. And of course you can encounter just someone in the wait staff who is annoyed. That can happen to you anywhere, right?
Of
But I
course.
do think that doing a little bit of research ahead of time into the local uh, dishes that are vegan by default or easily made vegan by taking something out, that helps a lot because that sort of goes over that barrier of feeling that you're not respecting the local tradition because Spanish people are incredibly proud of their fruits, their vegetables, their tomatoes, especially their olive oil, their olives. And by showing an interest to the dishes and also showing a little bit of knowledge and saying, hey, I know that this is something to try here. Um, do you have that? Can I just remove this because I don't eat meat? And I think people now in Spain are familiar with that because tourism is also huge here, and the amount of people who are maybe not vegan but vegan adjacent or vegetarian or that don't eat red meat or that don't eat pork, it's common now. And so I think people are having much better just reactions and they understand. They might say something outside of your outside of what you can hear, but who cares? That's part of being vegan too, I guess.
I always say we're asking not just for ourselves, we're asking for the person who's very
Mhm.
shy down the
Yes.
road. We're asking
Yes.
for the somebody who's very new and is like, "Oh, well, I'll see if there's anything. Oh, there's nothing on the menu. Okay, never mind. I won't I'll be vegan when I get back home again." So we're
Mhm.
asking for people. So I would say even if you find it a little hard, if you find a little awkward or fussy, it is really, you can hide behind someone else because I think one of the reasons I finally made the connection with everything was I was worried about my daughter being vegan. And so
Mhm.
I would ask for her. I would say, what can I tell my daughter she can have? What can I help her with? And so just having done that so many times, I learned so much just by asking for someone else.
100%. I love that part of your story. I've heard you talk about the process you went to with your daughter, and I just always call you the cheerleader mom or the vegan soccer mom. That this woman who is just so just has made it her mission to make life easier for her daughter. I find that so sweet and inspiring. And absolutely. And my husband, who is also vegan, he has this rule that whenever we're out and about and we're looking for something sweet, or even have to have a coffee and we want to ask a simple like bar or coffee shop if they have soy milk or almond milk or something like that. Sometimes we've been in a situation where we're walking down the street and he says he wants to get something or ask if they have something. And I say, no, I've been there before. They don't have anything. And he says, Well, let's walk in and ask just for asking. Because if enough people ask, someday that smart business person is going to say, well, wait a minute. I get 6 requests a day, or 15 or 25 requests a day for soy milk. I'm going to start buying some soy milk. And so I think we're all advocates, even when we're traveling in a foreign country, especially sometimes if we're traveling in a foreign country, because you're never going to see, you might not see that person again, right? And so just showing them that there is this huge, because it truly is huge, this huge market of people who want to spend their money in your business, but that eat in a different way. And we sort of need to start paving the way for people. And I think we've been doing pretty good. I think options are appearing more and more.
So nobody follows me for my cooking tips. So I can whip something up, but I'm not a particularly enthusiastic cook. I always recommend you and your
Oh,
program for
thank
people
you.
who are looking for, because people very often when they're new will just start buying books and websites and everything. Yes, fine. I love all those people. We try to feature them on the podcast, but your platform is very soup to nuts, if you will, and it it not only helps people cook or find solutions for certain meals, for certain kinds of genre of meal, whether it's a party or a simple supper or a breakfast or snacks. It not only does that, but it also helps you understand why that is a good meal, why that's the menu that's going to be healthful or supportive or nurturing. And so I would love you to talk a little bit about the features of Brownble, how people can work with it. I've been a member for a long, long time. I don't cook enough, but I'm inspired. So I want you to kind of help people understand what they find there.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much for your support as always. It's always lovely to know that you're there, and it's the best. So we've got so many different sides to Brownble, right? When I talk about Brownble in general, our podcast is included there with so much free information for anyone to access, especially regarding the sort of larger issues, the lifestyle aspects, the social aspects, all of the things where we need troubleshooting and support. We also have our YouTube channel with tons of recipes and other videos. But when we're talking about our school, we have a full online cooking school where we have a very structured path of culinary training, but it's not professional culinary training. It's, let's say, what you would take from just professional cooking applied to the home cook. And so it's for anybody who is trying to cook more at home, to improve their cooking skills, to learn about knife skills and cooking techniques and sauce making, from classic sauces to contemporary sauces, everything adapted to the plant-based kitchen, because of course, a lot of things need to be changed and adapted in terms of classic techniques and whatnot. But the idea is that you carry all of this information into making your life easier on a day-to-day basis. And so we cover everything from component cooking and understanding how it's not, of course, a nutrition program because I'm not a dietitian, but we teach you what resources we recommend in terms of getting all of those nutrient needs met as a vegan. But I do take that information and show you what that can look like on a plate in terms of having all of those components in your plate, different ways of including those in your plate. And so much when it comes to meal building, organization, which is a huge important part of the kitchen and cooking more at home. It's the let's say it's the underdog. It's the thing nobody wants to talk about. And it's the most important thing. I always say that good vegan cooking happens long before you grab an ingredient or you grab a pan or you grab a spatula. It's about developing a few systems and putting systems in place in your life with whatever time you have, with whatever knowledge you have, with whatever budget you have, and sort of repeating those systems and repeating the systems and focusing on the systems so that you then get to the end goal of cooking more at home, and you get to the goal of going vegan or making more vegan choices, whatever is your decision. But where that isn't so much the central focus, the focus is all of the step by step, the day to day, the practices, the how am I going to plan my meals? How am I going to organize my ingredients? How am I going to organize my time? How am I going to go from buying the things at the store to what am I going to make for dinner? All of that is included sort of within this culinary path. And then we have also other courses within our school where we teach you how to make delicious cultured plant-based cheeses. We have another course in which we tackle all of the lifestyle aspects of going vegan and everything you need to know. And so the idea with the school is that we wanted to provide people with all of the tools in my area of expertise, which is cooking, but also in terms of all of the other things that come up when you're making this change, which are sometimes the most essential and important ones to find firm ground on, because that's what's going to keep you moving in this direction. It's not so much whether, your tiramisu was better today or yesterday, or, it's not so much that. It's all of the other things. How am I going to navigate Thanksgiving with the family? What am I going to make? How do I have these conversations with loved ones? How am I going to go to the office party and deal with the comments that are being made? How am I going to navigate life with my partner? What do I do if I'm finding a new partner? What do I do if I have kids? If I am going through different life stages? I mean, there is so much to this change. And so we try to give all of this in the different sort of sides of our school.
Well, it is very encyclopedic what you've got there. You've got a lot going on. You also personally have gone back to school, and you are also challenging yourself in yet another way. Would you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of the people who listen to me are people who either are looking for that inspiration to change something in midlife. I would say you're not midlife yet, but but maybe you're warming up towards that term.
I find myself fully in midlife. I embrace that term, and especially I think so because I think I am, because I made this huge transition, and so often I've heard that this is the time in which you do that regrouping. And now that I'm thinking about it, Michelle, this coincided with the revamp of the podcast. So everything is sort of connected. It's these moments of reflection and of the life you've lived so far, what you want to do with the other half of your life. Hopefully now much more than half. I'm 42 at this moment, but hopefully now we get to live to 100 or more in wonderful condition. So when I turned 40, I made this radical decision to go back to school, and I'm getting my degree in psychology. And this has always been a topic that has inspired me, that I've been interested in. And I think my work at Brownble has inspired me even more, and was the sort of catalyst that made me say, you know what? Let's think about this seriously, because one of the things that I realized as I've been working with students, thousands of students have come through our doors for the past 9 years, and something happens. I don't know if it has to do with the way I put content out there, or our podcast, or I don't know what it has been, but our students have been the most communicative students. I've had so many conversations, in-depth conversations with our students via email, in the comment section, in our community. And I know so much of their stories. And so what you start seeing when people are making this change that is such a personal change, and when someone is tackling any change when it comes to food, so much of our inner world gets moved and transformed. And there's sometimes also it's the motivation, and sometimes certain things start coming up that need to be reassessed and checked, and things that have to do with our relationship with food or with our bodies or with exercise. Whenever we tackle food, there are so many deeper issues that are intertwined with that. There's so much nuance. And I just wanted to, I keep going back to this thing of wanting to give people the biggest source of support that I could give them. And nothing excites me more than understanding why human beings are the way they are, why we act the way we act, what we can do to improve our lives, to be happier, to be healthier, to live meaningful lives. And I think veganism is not far away from that. And I also wanted to explore this in as deep way as I could. And so, well, back to school it is.
Well, I think it's an evolution of you seeing how to transmute your interests and your personal approach to things, also informed by what all your students have been bringing to you. And so
Yeah.
I think we learn so much by teaching. We learn so much by holding people's hands and listening to them, because it's not, I think it's not just the cooking that's the issue, but it's good to give you that skill so then you kind of have that thing to go with your journey. But yes, what we're really giving people when we teach them any of these things is a little self-belief, a little like, maybe I can. Well, she seems to think she can that I could do it, or she did it and she never thought she could. So I think that's helping people believe in themselves. And what better to be more informed and more skilled in your ability to communicate with people and see what actually might be the block for some people, because when we're behind our eyes, we don't see it.
Yes. Psychology is such an incredible topic and sort of subject to learn from, because as human beings, when you study psychology, you start realizing, well, hey, wait a minute. First of all, we're also animals, and we're doing all of these things almost in an automatic pilot conditioning. We're going through all of this process in a way that we're just sort of programmed to go through. And then you start going into it a little bit more deeply, and you start realizing the effects our childhood has when it comes to the way we move through this world, and also when it comes to our relationship with food. And then there are so many connections that you start making when it comes to habits and habit formation, how we react, how our personalities interact with all of these changes that we're trying to make. And especially, and I know you're going to find this familiar because you're a coach, and coaching is such an incredible field, and you go into a lot of these topics too, but how no two people are the same. And so why are we approaching any life change, going vegan or not going vegan, with this cookie cutter recipe for everybody? We have different lifestyles. We have different histories with food. We have different, just not to mention all of the physical restraints in terms of budget, time, kitchen size, family lives, 2 jobs or 3 jobs. Not even talking about that, but in regards to our personalities and how we move through this world, what food has meant to us, what our families, the place of our families with us, the place we have within our family systems. I mean, there's so much depth to making any kind of change, but especially when it comes to food. And then, of course, there's this whole other area that I'm super interested in, and that we always have to keep in mind whenever we're advocating for any changes in food. And that's our relationship with our bodies, our relationship with the way we eat, making sure that we're not falling into very restrictive forms of eating disorders, disordered eating, which can be so harmful. And which I think, unfortunately, we're in this moment because of social media, because of the fact that you can get information from anywhere these days, where it's very easy to fall down a path where things are getting slightly out of hand and you don't know how to push the pause button until things have evolved and have become more serious. And so I never want to approach the topic of food without meeting the person where they're at and understanding where their limits are, and just understanding that there are also big issues when it comes to a person's personness. I know this is not a word, but their autonomy, their body autonomy, their choice, their what is right for each person based on their past history. There are so many other things where psychology just seeps into the moment of eating. And I want everybody to have the most peaceful, happy, fun, connecting time, even when going vegan, because I do think that those two things can happen together if it's something that you're interested in and that's important to you. So to me, it's just, they go hand in hand. And I'm so excited to dive in deeper. It's still many years away, by the way.
Well, I mean, so's everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're never done.
Yeah. I know you talk about uh, making these changes at different life stages in your podcast a lot. It's what I love about it. And I remember when I was making the change to go back to school, it has been a huge time investment. It has been a money investment. It has been time away from family. It has been, having to readjust work schedules and so much. And it's going to be such a long process. But I remember when I was about to make this change, I just kept thinking, and people kept repeating this to me. And I'm so grateful to the ones who did, but they kept saying, listen, yes, it's a lot of years. It's a lot of schooling, but the time is gonna pass anyway. And so you might, you might find yourself 10 years from now, 15 years from now, realizing that time passed. You're still there. You're still here. And none of it got done. Or you can just put one little step in front of the other and just focus on this year. After this year, you focus on next year, and you break it apart in such a way where you say, I'm just going to give it my all and I'm going to see where I land. And Michelle, time goes by so fast. I can't believe it. And no one could have convinced me of that when I started, because all I could see was this mountain ahead of me. And it's really not the case when you're in it. It's just one little thing you have to resolve after the other, like with everything we do in our lives. And the time is going to pass, whether we do it or not. So we might as well do it.
Yeah, and it gets faster and faster, trust me. but you know, and I think this is why I get excited about coaching on the topic of veganism, because I think the strategies you learn because we eat 2, 3, 4 times a day, however many times a day we eat in different locations or people, or so we are strategizing, especially in the beginning. It takes a lot of bandwidth in the beginning because all the things that were automatic are no longer completely automatic. So you have to recalibrate those. What better training than psychology to kind of help people make those sorts of changes and support them? But the next part is then you've got this skill and you blow your own mind what you're capable of. And you start to realize, oh, I'm not just living on a default setting all the time. So if I know that I don't have to live in a default setting, what's next for me? And that's why I think that this is so exciting. I see it. I see this bubbling in your life too. This you've just keep stepping into what's next for me.
100%. And you probably know this because you have been a very long time listener, but I grew up with a single mom. She had a terrible illness from the moment she was 11 years old. And so the years I had with her up until I was 21 when she died, she was the most lively woman in spite of all of her physical difficulties and an illness that would just not quit. She just kept making plans and doing all of these projects, and her life was just expansive, expansive, expansive. And she taught me by example, just by looking at her. But it also gave me this perspective of seeing, hey, wait a minute. So I have, thank goodness, at least right now, I'm healthy. I've got all this, this possibility of doing anything I set my mind to, and I have time. There's this thing we have with time that is time is such a weird thing, because I think as we get older, it can feel like the time is shortening, and we approach retirement age, and then we think, well, maybe I guess I just have to like find myself an easel and a paintbrush, and that's it. Not that that's reserved for or has any negative connotation to it. But there are so many painters in my family, but there's this idea that we're just set out to pasture, and none of the people who I know that have that are older than me have this feeling that their life is about to end. It's just this feeling that, well, I mean, I'm here, so there's time. Right now, there is time. And my mother taught me that. I have time. So what am I going to do with this time that I have? Because there's such a contrast with the life that we had towards her at the end of her life, where there really was no more time. And so that just, I think that has been like rocket fuel in my life, to not second guess so much, to just try and do things, to give things a try. If I have to reassess, if I have to take steps back, if I have to quit something and start something different, well, that's what we're going to do, because we have time. And yeah.
Well, what's that phrase you're reminding me of? Our second life begins when we realize we've only got one.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I mean, just there's so much wasting of that time, just thinking that we're not going to be able to do it, finding all of those excuses of why something isn't going to work out, or why we might not even try it. And of course, not everything is possible for everyone at any given moment. There are restraints. There's financial restraints for trying something new, and physical restraints and family restraints. But I agree with you in all of the podcasts that I've listened to of yours, where if you have something that's been in your mind, that's been it's just igniting a little bit of a fire inside of you, whether that's going vegan, making this change for the world, for your health, for the animals, or it's anything else, starting a podcast, starting a business. Time is passing. So let's take that first little step, just that first little step. And that's something that I teach our students, because if not, it feels so overwhelming. But we waste so much time thinking we can't do something,
or it's not the right time,
or it's not the right. Yeah, exactly. Or it's not the right time. And it's one of those things where you just have to take that first step, and you have to keep looking at as individual steps that we're taking. And we keep taking them, and we keep taking them almost blindly. And suddenly we've reached a first small milestone, and suddenly we've reached a second, and we try things out. I think it's so important. And I think that can happen at any age. I am so grateful that I chose my 40s to go into these studies, because the life experience is so essential. And I didn't have the same views that I have now when I'm reading a text and I have to analyze something. It's not the same. So this sort of golden age, the second half of our lives, I mean, I think it's the most brilliant part. For me, it's been the best part of my life after 40, for sure. And that's where we have that that glorious sweet spot where we have enough time left over, hopefully, but we have all the past lived experience. There's no other time like it. And so this is the time.
So you have with Brownble, with the
Mhm.
cooking school. So you've got students I know who are even older than I am, amazingly, and you have people who are very young. So you have people who have very few cooking skills, and you have people who've been cooking 3 meals a day for 60 years, right?
Yes,
So there's something for everybody.
100%.
Can you give me a sense of maybe something that the brand new plant-based and vegan eaters, brand new cooks love to learn, and something maybe the more seasoned veteran vegans enjoy?
Great. That's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that question. I love it. Okay, let's start with the veteran vegans. So the veteran vegans, they still always need support with the lifestyle aspects and the social aspects, believe it or not, because we still live in a non-vegan world. No matter how many years we've been vegan, we still have to deal with family members and friends and comments and things like that. So seasoned vegans and veteran vegans love our additional sort of videos and content to help support you and just be like a bit of a hand holding in the process. But in terms of the culinary skills, they love the knife skill classes. They love the cooking skill classes because although they've been cooking, now they have the right technique. Now they know what a brunoise cut is. Now they know all of these specific things that when you've been interested in cooking, it can feel so exciting to be able to put names to everything that you're making and understand sort of the science behind it. They absolutely love all of our sauce making classes and how I talk about all of the French mother sauces and the sort of adaptation to sauce making to the plant-based kitchen and to more contemporary classifications of sauces. They love those lessons. And they love getting into just more elaborate dishes, main dishes, just delicious roasts for Thanksgiving, making seitan steaks that they can pop on the grill. So things that they might not have ventured out to try yet and that are not difficult, but that do require having a little bit more of a base. And when it comes to the newbies absolutely love the lessons that I have arranged in which we talk about organization because they start realizing very early on that the limit they've had to cooking more at home hasn't really been the lack of knowledge when it comes to cooking because you can open your Instagram app and find in 5 seconds 30 different recipes and the visual, and you can really see what the process looks like. But where the school comes in and where our training comes in, it helps you really tackle all of those systems you need to have in place so that the cooking can actually happen. Because the thing I find that happens the most with our students is they have massive collections of cookbooks, Pinterest boards up the wazoo, so many saved recipes on Instagram, and they have yet to get into the kitchen cooking. And that's not their fault. And it's not the content creator's fault or the recipe books. No, all of this content is fantastic and incredible. The problem lies earlier in the systems we put in place for shopping and what we decide to make. How can we arrange planning meals in a way that feels doable? We teach 5 different systems for that. It has to do with every night before you go to bed, your counters need to be clear. Your sink needs to be clear so that when you walk into the kitchen, all you see is empty space to work in. It has to do with understanding just some basics of arranging your fruits and vegetables and the different techniques that you can pull from, how to make those techniques and whatever you're using very flavorful. And also just one thing I think everyone needs to start with is start where you already are. What are the meals that you already absolutely love? And they can be non-vegan meals. And so let's tackle each of those and let's see how can we swap out some things in this recipe. It could be that you love lasagna. So how can we swap out the meat in that bolognese and the non-dairy butter and the milk in the bechamel that goes into your recipe. It can be that you love having a pizza night. And so, how can we make that into its plant based version? It can be that you love huge salads. And how can we make sure that within that salad, it's not only vegetables you're eating, but you're getting all of those components to fill in all of those needs? And I think that when newbie students start realizing that before they even start cooking, they need to organize their pantry. And we teach a whole system for it. And before they do that, they need to get organized in how am I going to attack the grocery store and make a plan? Should I make the plan before I go or after I come back? And spoiler, there's not just one way, and we have to find the right way for each person. All of these things for the newbie, it just blows their mind because they realize quickly, oh, this is why I haven't been cooking more at home. And then, of course, we start with recipes and that starts happening naturally because all the systems are in place.
Yeah, you're absolutely meeting people where they are in terms of their skills and their preferences and where those speed bumps are for them, where they keep tripping and then going, oh, instead of having a strategy, they keep thinking there's something wrong with them. Usually, like I can't do it. It's not because they can't do it. It's because they just don't have the strategy or the tactic yet.
It's. I always talk about systems and goals, right? And this is the issue when tackling something so massive as going vegan or making more vegan choices. We are so centered on that being the goal. So, and this is even more meta than what I'm explaining now in terms of seeing vegan in this sort of distorted way of it, meaning I have to make 100% vegan choices every time. And I'm going to get this laminated card that says I'm vegan and I'm never going to stray. And the vegan police isn't going to come knocking at my door, right? So that's the meta way in which the focusing so much on goals misses the whole point. But when it comes to the specifics of cooking, it's like having the goal, I want to cook more at home. Great. I want to cook more at home. I want to cook more at home. You walk into your house and you say, I want to cook more at home. This is my goal. I really want to cook more at home. If this is the focus, we're missing out on all of the things we need to put in place to get you there. And so it's the systems, it's that meal planning, it's that component cooking, it's that organizing your fridge and pantry so you're not feeling stressed and overwhelmed. It's figuring out how shopping and meal planning is going to work for you, which system is going to work for you. Those are the systems. That's where our energy needs to be. Because if we follow the systems, the goal is going to happen naturally. It's going to come. And so it's so important. It's so important. It's not your fault if you have tried and failed many times. If you have tried to add more variety to your meals and you keep going back to the same four, if you have tried to add more flavor profiles and all your food is tasting sort of the same and you just feel that you're just a bad cook. No, there are so many strategies and so many systems we can put into place to help you step all sort of over all of those hurdles.
And one of the ways people can do that is you have been generous enough to offer a coupon code so people can try. So what can we use the coupon code for, Kim?
So the coupon code is for our school membership, and you can go to mybrownble.com and check out everything that's included, all of our different plans, and just use the coupon code VEGBEST at checkout. And you'll get a discount. And that discount doesn't expire. You can use it anytime. And if you choose a recurring membership, that discount is going to be yours for life as long as you are a continuous member. So you get that discounted price and we respect that for as long as you're there with us. And you can cancel anytime if you try it out. And we have a money back guarantee. If you don't like it, if you didn't like my style, it didn't feel right for you, we want you to be very happy and we want the process to be something that feels possible for you. And I hope everyone can take advantage of that and enjoy it.
Well, I hope everyone takes advantage of it. Kim, thank you so much for making time for
Oh,
us here at Veg Your
Michelle,
Best.
thank you.
It is a pleasure to have even just this opportunity to talk to you and see you. I'm seeing you face to face.
Michelle, thank you so much. This was a blast. And anytime you want to chat, I'm all yours.
All right, I'll take you up on it. So, what did you think of my friend Kim? Does she know she's my friend? Can you tell she's my Veg Your Bestie? As I said in the beginning, this was a longer interview than usual because I just loved talking to Kim. And if you have had that goal, that thought, I want to cook more at home, I want to cook more at home. Or if you almost don't even want to talk about it anymore, cooking at home, because you haven't stuck with it in the past, please take Kim up on her generous offer. Because did you hear her? Did you hear Kim at the end of the conversation? It's not your fault if you've tried and failed a number of times. It's not your fault if you haven't found a way to cook more at home or to add more variety or more flavor profiles, or if you feel that you're not a great vegan cook or that it takes too much time and bandwidth. It's not your fault. There are so many strategies and systems Kim is ready to help you put into place that will help you step right over what seem like hurdles. So go to mybrownble.com, use the code VegYourBest at checkout, and you will get a discount on whatever plan it is you choose. And okay, I know it was a long one. Thanks for sticking with us, my Veg Your Bestie. I hope you love Kim like I do. So follow her on Instagram and on her fabulous podcast, More Plants. That's a gift that you'll be giving yourself and all the people who deal with you and eat with you for the next year as you go out there and you veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.